All right, hello, and welcome to another edition of our Franklin Community High School Career Exploration Project. Today we have with us Paula Gardner, and she is a psychologist for the VA. Paula, first of all, thank you for joining us. So I guess just tell us a little bit about your job, about being a psychologist. I think there may be a lot of people who have kind of a thought of what a psychologist does. So why don't you help us clear the air and kind of tell us how you got there?
Okay, well, there are a lot of different jobs that a psychologist can do. In my job in particular, I am a psychologist in primary care. So there are physicians here in the primary care clinic, and I help them deal with the patients that come in. If somebody comes in, they screen positive for depression, they screen positive for PTSD, then they talk to me and I do therapy with them. It's usually brief therapy because I'm in the mental health clinic, or not in the mental health clinic, I'm in primary care. If somebody wants longer term care, they can go see the psychologist over in the mental health clinic where they do evidence-based treatments and stuff like that. But there are psychologists in all the different, in a lot of different jobs here, even at the VA.
Okay. So sorry, go ahead.
You asked me how I got here. You asked me, is it how I got this particular job or how I ended up in psychology?
Yeah. So actually all of that would be great. Yeah.
When I started college, I thought I was going to be a physical therapist. And so I started studying biology and chemistry. I did a brief time at a physical therapy place and realized that I didn't want to do that. And so I ended up graduating with a degree in chemistry, and I worked as a chemist for 4 years at an environmental agency. Then I decided that that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I went back to school and got a doctorate in psychology. And then I worked in private practice for almost 20 years before I started working here at the VA. And in private practice, I saw only adults, and it was just what you would expect for a typical traditional psychologist. People would come in, their insurance would pay, and I would see them for therapy for 45 minutes per session.
Now, when someone comes in for therapy, do you have like an end goal in mind, or is it like a long-term thing, or are there, which way you're going to go when you start talking to them, or kind of how does that work?
How does therapy work? Wow, that's a big question. Okay.
I try to keep you on your toes here, Paul.
Yeah, okay. That sounds great. So I think that there are different ways to approach therapy. So as many different therapists as there are probably that many different ways to approach therapy, because everybody brings their own personal self to the meeting. But there are also different groups of training, different ways of looking at it.
Right.
And so I go by the model personal construct theory. And so it's more of a humanistic narrative. The different theories of psychology would guide your principles and how you think about change in therapy. And so if I am trying to facilitate change, I think about the theory that I'm using and how that can help the person get where they want to be. So I don't have an end goal really, because I feel like the client is the expert on them. I'm just using my knowledge to help them get where they want to be.
I think you answered the question way better than I said the question. What? That's kind of what I was going for. Like, what was your theory and stuff? That's what I was working with. So as far as your job, what are some things that you see, some things you just love? And obviously, I'm sure just generally helping people is one of those. But what are things you don't like?
Things I like and things I don't like. Okay, yeah. So I switched from in private practice. I loved private practice because I had all kinds of freedom. I could make my own schedule. If I wanted to go into work at 10, which was my start time when I was in private practice, that was fine because my boss was me. The problem with that. Oh, and I always finished by 2:00 on Fridays. But the problem with that is if I'm not working, I'm not getting paid, and it's great when I had little kids, because then I could be flexible. If I wanted to go into their classroom on Wednesday morning, I could just arrange my schedule to do that. Now that my kids are, older and they don't need me like that anymore, I wanted to get into a position where I could have, more income to help pay for college. And so the VA more than doubled my income when I came here. I like working with the veterans, which is, I don't know, 99.9% of the patients that I see are veterans. And I enjoy the camaraderie. So in private practice, I was pretty isolated. It was me and one, client at a time. But here at the VA, there are physicians, nurses, physician's assistants. There's, scheduling people, administrative people. It's a lot. There are a lot more people. And so I enjoyed that as well. One thing I don't enjoy is working till 4 o'clock on Fridays. But I do, that is balanced by, I get paid for, we're off on Monday for whatever, Martin Luther King Day. And I'm going to get paid for that day, where I would never have had that in private practice. And so, there's costs and benefits. But in terms of the work I'm doing in terms of the psychology is a lot more brief and focused on a problem. When I was in private practice, I was helping people through things, and I would see people for many, many sessions, sometimes many years, depending on the situation. So it's just very different.
Yeah. That's interesting how just the different places you go and there would just be different sessions. I'm assuming that's based off of kind of probably the client, and probably, unfortunately, sometimes insurance.
Yeah, sometimes insurance. Insurance is a lot better than it was, say, 10 years ago. I think that there are some people who in private practice that I would only see for a few sessions if that's, what they needed. It's not that if you're going to therapy in private practice, it's going to be years and years, because that's not true either. It depends how focused it is. If somebody wants to come in just for smoking cessation, we could probably finish it in 6 sessions if they're, really motivated and, ready to apply what we're talking about. Yeah. But if you're talking about a personality disorder or some of the other stuff that is really, really stuck in pretty hard, right, that's a different issue.
Yeah. So as far as being in this profession and being a psychologist, what do you think, like, personality wise, someone would be successful at this job, and personality wise, what do you think someone may not be as successful at this? I'm assuming first one is low amount of patience.
Well, yeah, you'd have to be pretty patient. Did you say patience?
Yes, like patient, like patient. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in therapy, you do have to be very, very patient. In my life, I'm not super patient person, but at work, I can be very, very patient. And I think that I think it has to do with how I think of it. I don't think of the problems that people bring me as my problems. They're their problems. I just have to help them. And so I just join them where they are and carry along. But a person who wants to be a psychologist, it's interesting. There are some very outgoing psychologists, and they do great. And, they do presentations and, mixers where they're rubbing elbows with people. Well, not right now, but, meeting and moving on the up and up and joining the associations and stuff like that. And that's great. But there are also psychologists there are a lot of psychologists who will tell you they don't like people. And I probably am one of them. It's not that I don't like people. What it is, I don't like people. I can handle a person just fine, but I don't like people. I don't want to be in a big group of people. If I'm in a big group of people, I'm comfortable. I just am not going to talk, and engage in that way. And so I'm not as outgoing as some others. And so I don't think that is necessarily an indicator. There are so many different kinds of jobs in psychology that really a lot of different personality types would be fine.
Yeah. So, so I guess, how would someone prepare for that?
I did think of one thing. To function independently as a psychologist, you have to have a doctorate. And so if you are a person who can't write a sentence, you probably are not going to be doing well, because you're going to have to do a ton of writing all the time.
That makes sense. I mean, that seems to vibe a little bit.
Yeah.
So how would someone prepare to go into this field? Like, what would you suggest, whether it's classes in high school or personally, how would they do that?
Well, I think if a person knows that they want to be a psychologist, then they would probably want to interact with people as much as possible, or, you know, to spend time. So be a camp counselor in the summer or something like that. Maybe help some kind of, if you're able to help a group of kids or even elders, or find some kind of way to interact with a group of people. You could get a job for a psychologist and help with billing, help with paperwork, so that you understand that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you stay in and you're in training in college, maybe you're studying psychology or some other science or whatever, you could get a job administering tests. With a little bit of training, you could administer some of the psychological tests, and that's a good step in the right direction if you want to do that. But really, you know, you could get a master's in psychology before. I just didn't do that. I didn't get an undergrad in psychology. I think a lot of people, you know, careers end up sideways. You don't always end up where you think you're going to go.
Yeah, that's kind of the theme that we've been hearing in our interviews is a lot of, honestly, I think there's one person that we've talked to so far who has gone into the field that they kind of initially studied for college. So, yeah.
Well, it was really hard for me to switch to psychology because I was trained in like one of the hard sciences, and we always made fun of psychologists because it was pseudoscience. But, you know, I think that you can make real change. You can really affect people's lives. And I think that it's profound. And that's what drew me in.
Yeah. So thinking back to 16, 17-year-old you, what's some advice you wish you knew, or what's some advice for you for high school kids?
For high school kids, you know, it's really important that you give yourself as many opportunities as possible. And so you'd want to, well, first off, have fun, because it doesn't get easier than it is where you're 16. You're going to have more fun. You can have fun later, but it's different kind of fun. So have a lot of fun, but don't get in trouble. And just keep moving forward. Do the next thing that feels right for you.
Awesome. Yeah, it goes by quick, and next thing you know, you'll have a career, and you'll be wondering what happened to the days when you were kind of carefree, right?
Right.
So, okay. Well, Paula, thank you so much for joining us once again. Paula Gardner, she is a psychologist with the PA. We appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Not a problem. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.